I'm sitting here with Jason Fischer, Head of Development at Bambora, a leading international payments company. What we're going to talk about today is culture, and more specifically, the culture of a tech-based business and the challenges that they face when trying to scale and implement projects. Jason entered the business and it had a number of challenges, both that were related around culture. These were both technical and people related. Soon after the business, Jason was faced with enormous challenges of rapidly scaling his team, implementing Agile, and moving from a manual development process to a CI/CD process. They're now 2 years on, and from what I can tell, they've been quite successful in rolling out these projects and implementing a culture that works and implementing change. So I've taken the liberty to share with you Jason's insights on this journey and asking him some questions about how he built a culture that works while scaling and implementing these massive projects. I'm really excited about this. Jason, thanks for joining me today.
No problem, thanks Sam.
All right, good. So firstly, I think it'd be great if you could outline the situation that you entered when you entered the business and the challenges that you faced.
Okay, so when I first joined, all the cards were on the table. So the person who hired me ran me through the current challenges that we were going to face, the fact that it was the early stages of an acquisition, so the challenges that come with that in terms of previous leaders leaving the business, new people coming in, teams that were struggling in terms of what they were doing, how they were doing it, and with any sort of acquisition, a natural thing that happens is sometimes there's a bit of a drain in terms of people. People take it as an opportunity to leave, try something different, and this was no different really. So when I came in, it was a relatively small team. It was a mix between some permanent people, some contractors, as well as consultants that had been brought in as subject matter experts to help out in a few areas. So it was quite important to make sure that we held on to as much knowledge as we could, and also work through the challenges that we were facing with the team that was there.
Okay.
Around the actual people, I think 2 years down the track, we've still got about 4 of the original 8 that were there, which is neither good nor bad. It's just one of those things. I think one of the benefits was that yes, we lost a lot of good knowledge, but we also lost a lot of bad habits.
Okay.
So what was happening previously is the teams that were there were being told what to do, how to do it, and when to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a bit too very structured around what they were doing. And the key focus that we had moving forward was making sure that we opened that up for them.
Okay.
So they could make decisions, come up with suggestions, help around how we were doing things. They were the people who were actually working with the day-to-day.
Yeah.
They knew what the pain points were. They knew what they had been wanting to try for a while. So the key thing was getting the right people in the right places.
Yeah.
So what I mean about that is there's obviously a lot of change that would happen. A lot of new people would be coming in. So we had to make sure that we had the right knowledge in the right areas. We knew where it was we were trying to go. Mm-hmm. So from a developmental perspective, we knew that we didn't want to be as hands-on as we were before. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the manual process, what that really was is a developer would check in a piece of code. They'd then send an email over to a DevOps person. They'd review what was checked in, decide whether they were going to actually take all of it or part of it, compile that, and then manually copy DLLs into a production environment. All obviously within the norms of change control and things like that, but it was a process that would take more than 5 days to do.
Okay.
So first thing we did was we broke it down into things that could be automated.
Yep.
So we started looking at putting in Bamboo and Octopus. So Bamboo was basically there, so the moment we made a change, they would get committed. Basically a build would happen in the background. We'd create artifacts. So it wouldn't be up to someone to decide what went in and what didn't go in. That was all automated now. Mm-hmm. That would then get pushed into Octopus, which is what we used for continuous deployment.
Yep.
So we don't have a true CI/CD pipeline just yet, but we've automated part of the way. So we've sort of started on that journey. Some of the things that we're still busy with is our automated testing and having that be part of that process. And we were quite stringent around how and when changes go into production. So that's one of the things, again, the nature of our business and the nature of the applications we need a bit more control over. So what we've now got is that gate where we can do all the right reviews, make sure everything's been vetted properly, make sure it's gone through our dev environment, the QA environment, the UAT environment, and then pre-production and production. So we can actually make sure all the right things have been tested, all the right integrations have been tested, and then obviously move that in onto the next stage where customers can start using it. So that was one of the main things. The challenges that were there were all around having everything be so manual, having people, all of the information about the applications was in their heads. So it was doing knowledge sharing, information sharing. It was sharing processes with different teams, making sure that the teams started coming together. So it was very siloed before, as I said. Developers would work, throw things over the fence, DevOps would grab it, throw it over the fence.
Right.
So it was bringing those teams back together again. So that was part of the agile process that had started, and then continuing that on was making sure we had good Scrum teams in place. So there were some natural leaders in the business. They sort of started bubbling up to the top. We started supporting them to make sure they had what they needed. Sent everyone on training around Scrum, how it works, the agile processes, the different methodologies that they could be implementing. And then also bringing in the product owners, making sure that they had the information they needed and giving them the autonomy to do what they needed to do. So we ended up breaking it down into 4 teams, where we had product-based teams and then one team that sort of worked very heavily with our DevOps group. That was more reactive work that came in. So we had a mix of both Scrum and Kanban. And that's sort of how we got through that first, the initial phases of things.
Cool. So I picked up on a few things there, and I think you sort of touched on it, of that, well, the challenges that you faced of implementing that CI and CD process from a very manual process. You took on a team of 8 people during the time. Did it get winded down to 6, or did you hire a bunch of people to 4? Or did you hire up to, I believe the last time we chatted it was around about 30 people to where it is now? Yeah,
that's right. So what actually happened was it was the natural attrition process. So within the first few months, there was probably about 1 or 2 people who ended up leaving. But in the same vein, we were hiring in new people at the same time. So within the first 6 months, we went through a round of hiring almost 30 people.
30 people in 6 months' time?
In 6 months,
okay, cool. What was the process of keeping that culture or whilst doing this? So what did you have in mind to hire the right people, first of all? Did you have an idea of the culture you're trying to create?
Definitely. Yeah, so I think one of the key things for us was making sure that we knew what it was we were trying to build. It was a collaborative environment, somewhere where people were able to question each other about what they were doing and why they were doing it. Again, we had such a dictatorial way of working previously that it was working with some people so that they would come out of their shells and start questioning things, letting them know it's okay to question things, and that they actually have that authority. So the QA team is a good example. A lot of the time they would sit back and pass something, but they weren't actually comfortable that they'd done enough to test it. So giving them that authority and that power basically to say, well, no, this isn't right, this isn't, or I haven't had enough time to do everything I wanted to do, I'm not letting it go forward. So having that open environment where people could question each other, but also finding the right people where they would check their ego at the door. It wasn't about the person in front of them, it was about the challenge that they were trying to get through. So that was one of the key things. What we did from a technical perspective is we would always have about 3 people part of the interviewing process. So it was, in the beginning it was myself, one or two of the head developers, and then the product owner as well. So the whole idea was I would start things off, talk about the business, warts and all, let them know exactly what state the code is in today, because I found that was really critical. There's no point having someone join you and on the first day they want to run for the hills because they don't like what they see. So it was being very open about that and honest, saying, look, this is where we're at today. VB.NET, 90% of the code is written in that, so you have to be comfortable working in that. But what we're trying to get to is proper service-oriented architecture, C#, moving more and more towards AWS, and having that sort of shift as well, and making sure that they're aware of what the journey is. So I think that opened up a lot of doors as well, and made people be a little bit more open about what was going on.
Yeah, right.
Then we start jumping into the technical side of things. So we had a code exercise that they would do beforehand. With that, it's basically just a Bitbucket page that explains what we want done and outlines what the expectations are. So we would have a look at that, see whether they, the code was something we'd want to work in. It had the right unit tests, they could follow instructions, and then just sort of overall ability. That would then get them in for the actual face-to-face interview. So the senior developers would then go through some of the more generic questions that they had. We'd start kind of high level, what's the sort of projects that you've been working on, which elements did you actually work on, and then we'd start drilling down further and further and start getting into more sort of technical type questions. There was a lot of whiteboarding as well, so we'd give them a problem, ask them to solve it. It wasn't about having them have 100% accurate code or pseudocode. It was more about seeing how they approached a problem, and the way that they were actually thinking about things, which is also what we try to sort of assess through the actual code exercise. But these questions were more, again, to see can they actually do what their resume says they do and what the code exercise reflects. As not as difficult as it is, sometimes people do elaborate a little bit on what they can do.
I can see that,
So it was about vetting some of that.
Okay.
So we made sure we did that. And then we'd also bring in the product owners so that we could get someone from every angle of the team and have a really good conversation around, whether they thought they would be able to work with these people on a day-to-day basis and whether they were happy with having them there. So it was all about that collaboration of the entire team and empowering them to do what they needed to do.
Okay, cool. I wanted to touch on a couple of things there. I think one of the most important things, and I see this as supporting a number of businesses growing in the recruitment industry, is one of the key things that I think if you led that recruitment drive of scaling that many people with the idea of not selling what commonly gets sold a lot is the idea of rainbows and unicorns to developers, that adds a certain amount of clout to the longevity of when a person's going to stay in the business. So if they're told from the start that these are the challenges that they're faced and not just everything else that's so good about the company, they come into it with open eyes as opposed to rose-tinted glasses as sort of place. So I think that's a big checkbox from, I guess, a strategy perspective of hiring the right people. The other thing is what I want to say is when you come from an environment or a culture of that was so autotelic, I think you said, or where
Dictatorial.
Beg your pardon?
Dictatorial.
Yeah, exactly.
I come from South Africa, so dictators is par for the course. So
Dictatorial, right? Yeah. Of being what, when, and how, and just everything sort of strictly told what to do. And I guess where you're attempting to create people to be more collaborative, and also I think it's a big word that's been used up there, be vulnerable with their skill set and able to open up that communication. How do you encourage that? How do you encourage that with your people to make that safe environment to allow them to express, I guess, what you guys need as heads of departments or CTOs or engineering managers to get the best out of people to make sure that they're telling you exactly what needs to be done?
That's a tricky question, really. It depends on the actual person.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as leaders, we need to be aware of who it is we're dealing with, what their situation might be, and where they're actually coming from. So it's tapping into them as an individual and then tailoring what you do. There's no one way to deal with the person. So you have to adjust what you're doing based on who you're talking to. But the key thing is making sure that there's a no blame culture.
Yeah.
So when anyone is talking about anything, make sure that they focus on what it is they're talking about, focus on the facts, not the person. So it's working with them through those sorts of things, coaching them through it. As an organisation, making sure that you've got training available for people if needed. Again, we all come from different situations, different backgrounds. Some of us are better at dealing with these sorts of things than other people might be. So it's making sure that you've got the right training programs in place. So we've always spent a lot of time around people and making sure that everyone has what they need. So we'll make sure that there's training programs available from the entire organisation for all of the people leaders, so that they've got the tools that they need to actually have those interesting conversations, those robust conversations that happen in the office, and how to deal with those sorts of things. As a leader, in the beginning, it was relatively easy because the teams were small.
Yeah.
So we could always be there as part of those conversations and make sure that we sort of checked things out and kept people on track and sort of directed away from it being about a person and more on what we were actually doing. But then as we started growing and leading by example a bit as well, the rest of the team started behaving in very similar ways. So again, it's one of those things where you have to adjust it based on who you're talking to, but you've also got to lead by example. People will learn from what you're doing, and it's figuring out what makes them tick and how they listen, and then speaking to that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I picked up a couple of things there. That was the first thing that I'm so glad you mentioned was the idea of a no blame culture. How did this come up? And is that something you've been a part of before, or is it something that you read and implemented into the job here? And how has that been successful in creating that the culture that you guys want to succeed?
So I've been on the receiving end of the blame culture through my career. When I was coming through the ranks, I know what it's like to be singled out as no, but it's your fault. No one wants to be in that position. No one likes being told they're doing something wrong. So I guess the key thing for me has always been, again, knowing what the facts are and sticking to that, and then making sure that everyone else is on the same page. If someone starts getting a little bit heated, or they start going, but you said this or you did that, it's your fault, it's bringing them back to what it is we're actually focusing on, and keeping people on track. So that was the key thing, and like I say, having that additional training for the other people as well. It's definitely something that if you get it wrong, it doesn't cause a major issue then and there, but it starts breeding ideas and issues later on down the track. The things you don't actually check and stop from a cultural perspective are the things you get known for.
Right.
So it's making sure you read those things out very early on in the piece.
Okay. What other parts of the culture of the team that you feel like are so important for creating a team that works?
Having people who are curious.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is, yes, there's some people who they'll get stuck in and they'll do what they need to do, and that's what they focus on, and that can be a way of being and how some people work. But making sure you've got the right number of people who are questioning. Is there a better way of doing this? Why am I spending time doing this if I could be doing something else? Yeah. I was always, I've often said to people that I was a very lazy programmer. If I could write the smallest amount of code, I would do that. If there was the smallest amount of whatever to test, that's what I would try and do for myself. And it's making sure that people always keep that in mind. So if they're working in something new, it doesn't make sense to actually break it down into smaller elements, refactoring code, applying solid principles from a development perspective, all those sorts of things, but always being aware of it, being allowed to do it. Yeah. There's so many places that I've seen where they don't allow you to change what's there. You always have to add something new and bolt it onto the top, and you then have to keep living with that tech debt and that legacy issue. Whereas if you can look at something, you can say, okay, well, I've got this problem, it's in 10 different places, why not consolidate it into one area, make sure you've got the right automated testing, and make sure you've got the right coverage in terms of regression testing, but then make that change. Because then later on, instead of having to change it in 10 places, you're changing it in one. So it's that side of things, but again, giving people the flexibility to actually do that, and question what's going on.
Question what's going on. Okay, cool. So we've got creating a no blame culture, encouraging curiosity, and then having a business that supports that curiosity, so with education and growth and environment to do so. Getting rid of that dictatorship, so allowing people to have we mentioned curiosity before, but the opportunity to express their thoughts. What else?
think that's quite a mouthful at the
Quite
moment.
a mouthful,
Yeah, look, I guess at the end of the day, it's about, like I said, finding the right people, putting them in the right places, hiring smart people, getting out of their way, letting them do what they need to do.
Yeah, so getting out of their way and letting them do what you do. So giving them, I guess, enough rope or that level of trust.
That's right.
And autonomy to do what their job is to do. So getting away from that micromanagement perspective.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I think being in there with them, going through those experiences with them. It's one thing, telling people you should be doing X, Y, Z. If you're not there, it makes a big difference though. So getting stuck in with them, you don't necessarily have to be the one coding or doing the change, but being involved as part of the team, being visible, bringing coffee,
right,
anything that'll help them along the way. I think that all those little things add up and adds to that level of satisfaction for people.
Cool.
It's one thing having a ping pong table and whatever else, but those things used to be draw cards for people. It's starting to slow down again. It's all about the way of working and how they work in the different teams and who they're working with.
Yeah.
We spend more time at work than we do anywhere else.
Yes.
So you really have to enjoy what you're doing and who you're doing it with. And if you're not, ask yourself why.
Ask yourself why, yeah.
It's either something you can change for yourself, or if it's something you can't or don't want to change, maybe you should be doing it somewhere else. That's always a choice.
Yeah, and there are such important things, and being in the tech, being recruiting in the tech space for the good part of 6 years now, I've seen those draw cards definitely shift. So, yeah, a lot of those things are like what you mentioned before about the ping pong tables and those break rooms and all that stuff. And I guess they're important, but definitely downtime. I'm so glad you touched on that before because we spend the majority of our lives working, right? When you're when you are working, so it's so important to be doing things that you love and you're engaged with, and you're to get the best out of you as a person, for everybody involved, and how from an employer's perspective, it's you guys are achieving that by creating an environment that allows people to get the best out of what they do to provide that community feel or safeness and family feel. Yeah, family feel. Interesting. All right, Jason, I think we're gonna leave it at that. I think we can keep going, but some really good tips there and great things, and I'm so grateful for you joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Sam.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you very, very much. All right. Cheers. Thanks.